value that team that's actually creating for you. And, not just work so hard to replace them. It's like tech's highest and best use is in service of humanity. So the integration of tech with humanity has to be the goal.
Welcome to the Tech Unlock podcast, where we demystify emerging technologies and give you the keys to unlock your successful tech career. I'm your host, Grace McJones. Let's unlock the future together. When it comes to, women in the workforce, especially within tech, at what point do we say enough is enough? Because I feel like we have also preached, diversity, tech, inclusion at the expense of our mental health, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, stick in there, like we're just saying, like, do what it is. But it's like, how do you evaluate your life and career to say, okay, this is not worth it anymore, and I need to prioritize my mental health, my sanity, because this is not working out, And I feel like that's not a conversation that we have so often, because we're like, oh no, we need you, and we do. But I do feel like a lot of people have hit so much burnout that it's almost like, I don't even want to work. Like, don't look at me, don't talk to me, don't send me a message on LinkedIn. And it sucks because we're like, oh, okay, we've lost this person forever. It's not like, oh, I'm going to temporarily break. It's like, no, they have been just burnt out to the max. Or people who were burnt out and then they got laid off. And it's like, wait a minute, I gave you everything and this is how you pay me, and they're just kind of like animosity. And obviously a job is a job, right? Like, it shouldn't be your life. And I try to tell people that. But it's hard when, for a lot of people of color, a lot of times they are the first in their family to work within this industry to make the money. And so there's a lot depending on them. So there's this internal pressure, but also external pressure from family or, your tradition, and then with your job and everything else. So at what point do we look at what's happening and say, you know what, thanks for the last few years, but I'm out?
Wow. So much. I could say so much there. And that's such a great question. Thank you for it. So we have done a lot of sacrificing. We always do a lot of sacrificing. And I'm speaking specifically for women of color, for minoritized people, right? Because there's this whole thing about who's centered and what normal is. And that's a whole nother, I'm going to write a book one day on that.
Please do.
But,
please do.
One of the things that I want to say, if I could say to my younger self, I would say, understand what you're going in there for. Many minoritized people are brought up to mold themselves to a different standard. And so we're in that habit. By the time we get finished with education, by the time we get into the workforce, we're so used to going in there, not seeing ourselves, right? And going, okay, what do I have to do? How do I have to dress? How do I have to talk? There have been people who felt pressured to go out and be part of that beer drinking. I don't drink beer. Drink beer if you want to. But, they felt like that was the pressure that they had to do, was do what the group was doing. And that's part of the sacrifice, because anytime you continue to do things that really are not you, that are not required in your job, that's when the burnout happens, right? When you're asked to be the one that takes the notes and you're the one with the PhD, but you just happen to be the woman, right? That's where those types of things are where the rub happens. And, I can't tell you that those things are not going to happen, because they all happen to me. I don't have a PhD, by the way, but I mean, things like that, Let me not mislead anybody. I'm not Dr. Wilkerson yet. But I feel like if we go in there understanding, I'm getting something out of this, and I'm going to contribute, but here's what I'm going to learn. Because my goal, what is my ultimate goal? If your ultimate goal is to be the owner of something, you're going to develop your own thing. Your ultimate goal is to, I don't know, whatever that is. In those experiences, go in there and make sure you're getting that done for yourself. Because many times I think we're in there just saying, if I give, if I give, if I give, if I give, they're going to notice. Never happened to me. Not to the place where I got the promotion or I got the stock, never got any stock, nobody ever offered me any.
Wow.
And I worked for Fortune 100 companies. I didn't even know about it, right? And so that's when you turn around and you look, wait, how long have I worked? And I don't have all of the things that other people have. I wasn't in those rooms. I was left out of those rooms. So the one thing that we do in community is help people know that. Like, young people need to understand that part of their the salary is just one part of your compensation.
Yes.
You need to go in there in those companies and negotiate for those other things. But if you don't even know about those other things, then you're going to get left out. Right. And so when you're in there and you're like, I don't really like this, but I'm learning this skill and I'm learning this, that, and the other, and I'm getting me some stock, or I'm getting whatever it is. Right. Understand, go in there with your priorities about what you're going to build within yourself while you're contributing. And it's not just contributing and not building. That's a form of self-care. Right. And make time in your schedule to be part of community. Go to meetups. Go become a member of, there's so many great organizations that have membership platforms. We have one. There are many others where sometimes you don't even have to talk, just listen. I mean, I've been involved where sometimes I was just like worn out, but I listened, right? I'm like, I got nothing to give right now, but I listened, and all of a sudden I was like, what? I didn't know that. Or, wow, I could do that. Oh, man, now I'm inspired. And I can update my goals. So it's like, what are you feeding yourself? And women, we're really bad at this because we're just like give, and we give. It's all over the place. And that's good. I don't know what the world would do without us doing that. Right. But where's that, take back 10, 15% of that to you, 20, 25% of that when you can to you. And some of that burnout would go down because you would be like, yeah, that was whack. That was whack. That was whack. But I got this. I learned that, right? Take those notes, those mental notes, and not be just about the sacrifice.
Wow. We can end right there, but I'm selfish and I have more questions. That was just brilliant. I love that response. And talking about not just working, but also building, like, what are you building for yourself at work?
Right.
It's a two-way street. When we have interviews for these jobs, they say, okay, what are you hoping to accomplish or whatnot? But it's also they're hiring you for a specific purpose. And you also have to evaluate, is this company, is this role really helping me build what I want to build long-term or even short-term, right? And I feel like that's a conversation that we forget sometimes to have within ourselves. Obviously sometimes there's desperation. There's just kind of like, I just need something. And then you get stuck. You're like, whoa, I thought I was only going to be here for like 2-3 years. Right. Now it's been 10, 15. Right. And it's hard to pull back because we feel like we've invested so much. And it's not giving what's supposed to give, And you're like, wow, okay. So I love that. That's such practical advice. Yes, there will be moments where you put in the work, you sacrifice, and you don't see what you hope to see. But by getting in community, you're able to learn from others what you can't really learn on your own. And I think that's a great example because that's something that I did once I started my career. I'm like, I don't know what I don't know. This is a totally brand new space. I've never been in tech. I don't know. None of my family members have been in tech. I'm the first to graduate, college in the US. So there's so much. And so for me, I'm glad that ERG groups existed, employee voices groups, because then I could ask questions, talk to people who were from, the same place like I was, who looked like me, which made a huge difference of like, also, okay, let me now go out and create a community, whether it's through this podcast or speaking. And that makes a huge difference to know like you don't have to do this alone. No. And even if you don't feel like contributing, because I feel like sometimes there's that pressure of like, if I go, I'm going to have to speak. I have to give advice. And it's like, no, you can just go and take it all in. It's okay to receive. We give a lot. And it's okay to receive and just be there and enjoy being amongst people who are also going through that same journey with you. And I think that's what a lot of people need to learn during the season of change and transition within tech.
Right. And I think because it's so out there that, the layoff numbers and people are talking to each other, it's easier to find others who are going through the same thing. Because, if you get alone in your head, you start to think this just happened to me, or this was just me. And you're like, that is the loneliest place to be. And it's definitely not true. And you have to find another pilgrim or two to go through this with. But I love what you said. This is the time to just be in community and to just go in. It's okay to receive. I feel like that should almost be a title of something.
Yes.
It's okay. And we've been conditioned that we're there to help, Some call us to help. Whether Brenda.
Oh man,
Brenda.
yeah.
Brenda.
Brenda.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's okay.
You can edit
No,
it out.
it's fine. No, but that's being real. And some people do see us as the help
Yeah.
from a
Yeah.
historical perspective. And it's
Yeah.
like, no.
Yeah.
I'm hired here, same as you,
Right.
because
And
I qualify for this job.
Yeah. So I want to say two things to that. So the other thing that I did in a previous role that was totally, I was giving, and I was probably never going to get anything. But I saw a need in there that really hit my soul, and I started to serve it. And I actually created something that then lived outside of that job. And out of that came this opportunity. People saw me for this opportunity. So
Wow.
in that space, I don't think I would have ever gotten any love. Right? But I found something else to do. So it's like, if you're just giving, that means you're waiting. You're waiting on someone else to form your future for you. But if you look around, that's where innovation comes from. You look around even in that space and see what's missing here.
Yes.
Right? And I mean, you got to be careful, because some, you create, you can't take it, and you might want to, right? But you could be inspired to go and do something else. The side thing many times is a thing where you gain opportunity, where you gain experience. You have people who, started blogs or, apps or things out of after work that then gained opportunity for them. So, I think the key is, let's not expect the job. The job is, especially via the conversation we had about the stock market, we're there, and that's what you're paid for, is to help them do what they do. It's great if they're, great managers and bosses, and they understand that it's a two-way street. But if they don't, it's up to you to create that other lane for yourself.
That's incredible. I absolutely love that. And I tell people all the time, there's a reason why innovation and intentionality starts with I.
Yeah.
I have to seek it
That's
out.
Right.
I have to look around and see what's missing. I have to take that initiative and not wait for, my boss, my manager, or someone to say, hey, that's not, the system is not set up for you to succeed that way. It not.
Just isn't.
And it takes work, and I think obviously there's a way to work smarter, not harder, but I think really open your eyes to say, okay, there's a level of ownership I have in this, where it can be blaming also on the company, the system, the economy. There's endless amounts of, people to blame, or things that are real, that are really happening. But going back to that I, which I feel like it's empowering, like, I can't control everything, but there are some things that I can control, whether that's upskilling, learning, going to events, like you said, solving a problem that you really care about. And I love that you brought a bit of that story, because I wanted to talk about your career of, being a computer scientist and working in the public school system and in Chicago. And I was like, how did you end up here? Like, I really was, when I was like, how in the, like, because
how in the world,
how did that happen? Like, who was like, but then you given a little bit, I would love for you to expand on how you found yourself in this role, which I feel like has had and will continue to have incredible impact beyond tech and beyond women. And because I do feel like there are instances where you look at your career and like, okay, I'm doing the formula, I'm doing this, doing that, and something's going to happen. And then there are other times where you're like, no, I have to make this happen for myself.
Right.
And then attract the opportunities that might come with it. So how did you find yourself as the president and CEO of Anita.org, the amazing organization that brings us Grace Hopper Conference?
So it's a circuitous route. And what I love about that question is, I hope that my answer encourages everybody, especially young people. We're not so young people, we start out, we think, okay, here's my plan. I'm going to work here, I'm going to here, and then I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. And when it doesn't work out exactly like you thought, you can be disappointed. You can feel like a failure. You can get depressed. You can say, wait, especially those of us who just like, I had my plan, well, I was supposed to be a doctor. My mother she had her lawyer, she had her accountant, she was getting her doctor. And I had wanted to be a doctor. She had programmed me, from an early age. And so I accidentally became a computer scientist. And it was hard because, I always tell this, I was like, we grew up in an all Black neighborhood. Now, for everybody, that doesn't mean we were all poor. But it does mean, right? You have to say that because people's like, "Ooh, the projects," right? Not love folk in the projects, but
riches.
Right? It's like
disclaimer.
People always want to like, "Oh, poor you." I'm like, no, I had great parents, educated parents. My teachers my parents both had master's degrees. They were educators. My dad was a journalist. We lived in an all Black neighborhood. And, I just shared with someone I was talking to last week, we actually live in a more segregated society today than we did in the past. Okay. Segregation is a real thing. And so, the systemic issues of that was, even though I was at the top of my class, the policies that go in urban communities is that there are certain things they don't put in certain schools. And so there was no computer science in my school because those kids can't do that. And so when I got to college, even though I was at the top of my class, as an engineering student, I hit my head on my first programming class, which was required. Right. And so then I was like, how did I get here? Wait, I'm this good student. What happened? And then I was like, oh, it wasn't available for me. Right. And then I'm sitting there and I'm like the only woman and most time the only Black person. And they're looking at me like, and I got professors asking me why I'm there. Right. So I went through all of that, persevered, got the degree, went to work, and some of the same stuff. Right. That same stuff was happening corporately. And so fast forward to when we were pregnant with our first baby, and I'm wearing, I'm old enough, the beeper. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to be up babysitting software when I'm, nursing the baby. And so then that was when I took my first foray into education, and I led a computer training institute at a community college. And that was a whole experience because my students were between 20 and 60 or 80, literally, who wanted to get into tech. And I began to create that bridge for them. But as doing that, I listened, and I could hear Miss Smith in 5th grade who said, girls aren't good at math. You're not good at math because you're a girl. And that was still plaguing this 35-year-old woman who had chosen a different career because she had been told she wasn't good at math. Or the guy who was like, I don't know how to write. Mr. Smith said, I'm not a good writer. And I'm like, yeah, I see your writing is perfect. And so then that really built in me. I was like, oh, this problem starts early. Here are some people who wanted to be in tech, many of them in the first place. And now they're giving up their nights and their weekends to get into something that the door should have been open for them. So then all of a sudden, when I got an opportunity to go into the K-12 administration space, which I did not want to do, by the way, having stood on the picket line with my parents, I was like, no, I'm not ever doing that stuff. All of a sudden, I was hired to come in and cover IT education, and they were trying to downsize it. And I was like, downsize it? What are you talking about? But they were reading a government report that was 5 years old. And so then I had to get in there and fight for those little Black children because Chicago public school is, highly Black and brown. And so all of those experiences, right? I didn't become a doctor. I became a computer scientist, and then I had drama, and then I didn't want to stay because I was having a baby and I didn't want to put up with the 1,000 paper cuts. All of that could have felt like derailment. It was like, where's my white coat? I was supposed to be writing prescriptions. And here I am. Right? But all of that uniquely qualifies me for what I do today. Because I've been in those spaces where women have been. I've had those experiences. I know what it's like to have to fight to be recognized for the work that I did and not have it handed to somebody else. I've had that happen. I've had a person hired over me, happened to be a white man, who was told that there was going to be a woman who could help him with this project. Me, the one who created it. And that he got the job because he looked the part. So this is not something that's unnatural to me, right? When you find yourself in these weird turns and getting these experiences, like I said, get what you can get in there. Because I did. I was able to develop a pathway for people. I didn't know I was going to do that. But out of that and listening, I learned a key ingredient for K-12 students that they need to not be left out like I was, and to have opportunity and choices and not have to work as hard as I did to catch up. That may have been academic for me if I hadn't had that experience, right? Does that make sense?
Yes. Wow. All right. Netflix needs to hit you up literally for your own docu series, because this is I don't think of, I do research, but it's like I don't think I've ever heard that full story in its all entirety. And I feel like this is so timely because there are a lot of people who are probably not going through something similar, but in the journey of this twist in terms of like, what's going on, right? Like I have this ability to see certain things other people don't see, and I have this experience, but it doesn't match with this. And it's like, we're trying to make it all make sense. And it just goes back to what we said earlier of like, hang in there, like stand your ground.
Hang in there.
The right opportunity is coming to you, right?
It
and
is.
I think everything you've said has just kind of shown a light on like you kind of knowing your purpose this whole time, but needing kind of like a platform to be like, oh, she's about this life. She didn't start in 2020. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like she's been on this, and I feel like a lot of people are probably like, okay, no, like, I've done this and this is, it's like, no, like if you aren't given that platform, build it. If you see that
make
there's
your platform.
a need, make your, and this
That's
is
right.
the best time. And this is the advice I give a lot of people now who are looking for a job. Doesn't mean everyone is an entrepreneur, but it's like, build that platform, whether that's, writing a newsletter or having a podcast, like have that level of ownership. And like I mentioned, having that like, oh, I can control this. I can do this on my own. That shows something that I'm passionate about, right? That maybe might not have anything to do with my job, but it's like, no, like I have the ability to make change where I'm at. And obviously it might not make sense overnight, but it's like believing that there's just kind of like guidance to whatever you're doing. And I love that you never really steered away from that, but you're like, hey, I'm going to keep creating space for other people. Like what happened to me is not going to happen to the other kids.
Right.
Not on my watch.
Just not on my watch. No. My mama said, leave it better than you found it. And I've always taken that to heart. And I just want to say to people, when you're irritated, and we're all irritated, right? Though, if you're being laid off or, left out, take that as that grain of sand in that oyster that makes the pearl. Right? That's how you get a pearl. It's that irritation. You irritate it, form something around it.
Wow.
Do something with, make that your reason to find, don't sit in it. I see it's so easy, and we have so many pressures, and life is so crazy, and mental health is, boy, challenging right now. And that's why you have to find something to do. Right? I was recognized for this job out of my passion project at my at Chicago Public School. Not because of this other stuff that I did, but because of that passion project. That's what elevated me.
Wow.
Right? So, and it was out of my irritation. I was like, wait, how old am I now? And little Black and brown kids, they're still going through this? Because at first you excuse it. You're like, oh, that was just me. And that was just during my time. Yeah. And, and you're like, wait a minute, what? At some point the cycle has to be broken. And so I want to say to everybody out there, be that cycle breaker.
Yes.
There's some cycle that you're in. You see it differently. Other people sitting around you may not see it. That's your opportunity. They're like, what cycle?
There are cycles?
There's a cycle?
I never knew. Where though?
Where though? Where cycle?
And we live through it every single day. We see it. It's our reality. Oh my gosh. I love that. I think, I don't know. I'm like speechless. I'm like, wait, I need to take my notes, because I'm benefiting from just having this conversation, because there's just so much realness and practicality in what we're talking about, not negating the realities of what is happening all around us. And I tell people, it's like, we're more than just our jobs, right? Because I think it's so easy to be like, oh, I am this person, and that's where we fall into the trap of our jobs being our identity.
Yeah.
And so when it's taken away, there's just kind of, oh, like, who am I?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, oh, you girl, you're more than
Yeah.
that. You
You're
know,
way more than that.
way
And we
more
need
than
to
that.
and we need to encourage ourselves, right? So one of the things, the strategies, and we talk, people have heard this out of the women in the Obama administration. If there's two of y'all in there, go, did you know that Susie was doing, Shaquita is a bad sister. Did you know what she did? Because Shaquita has been taught not to tell you.
Yep.
Right? And then you say, yeah, and Mary, this is what Mary, did you know this is the project that she's working on? When she's talked over, I think that I remember Harry and Mary say that last week, So we need to be that megaphone, that voice, and put it out there. If you can't, you got to learn to brag. If you can't brag, you got to get somebody else to brag for you.
Yeah.
Because, that is one of the things that is part of waiting on the job. You think if I would just work hard and do this and do that, I'll be recognized. Maybe not.
And you have to ask yourself, is that a gamble you're willing to take? Right.
Because
at the end of the day, closed mouths don't get fed.
That's right.
You have to voice it out, or have a community of people, whether that's sponsors and mentors. I know people say that all the time, but it's true.
Right.
It's true.
It's true.
You can't be a one-woman army, one-man army trying to do all this and be Superman. It doesn't work like that in a corporate setting.
No, it doesn't.
And so I love everything that you've said, and I obviously wish we had more time. But lastly, we're talked about the present and all the chaos and everything that's happening, but also really hopeful when it comes to the future of tech careers. And I think we've touched about it literally in the past, 20 minutes or so, about taking some initiative. What does it look like? What do you see the future of technology in terms of careers in the next 10 to 20 years?
Well, the big pink and striped elephant in the room is AI, right? And everybody's hot to trot about what it's going to do. And it is going to do whatever people do with it. And so that's, again, why people of lots of different backgrounds, and when I say different backgrounds, I mean ages as well, because I think there are things that have happened in tech that have been devastating. And I would point to the fact that everybody in there was 20. And nothing wrong with being 20. I was 20 once. But, somebody who was 30 or 40 or 50 had been in there and said, you know what, I've seen something like that before. And maybe we need to add a little salt here and just temper it, right?
Yes.
And so, having that diversity is so important. So I feel like as we go to the future, for those of us who really need to be in tech, and that's everybody that wants to be, and that we need to be there, it's going to be about, of course, looking at emerging technologies, looking at and educating yourself and staying skilled around those things. But equally importantly, having that community of voices around you that even keep you centered, right? Because many times you think, especially as technologists, you focus in on what you're creating and you think that it's good and it's right. But you need those users, right, to tell you, oh, this is broken or this doesn't serve me, and actually listen to that. And I think there's a lot of space for those of us to represent people who've been left out. We have an aging population, and, the trend towards removing people from absolutely every process is not going to serve old folks, and they're going to have, at some point, they're going to need a person to be in there. And so people in leadership who really can design the systems of the future need to figure out when there's a person that needs to intervene. And not just do this cute, okay, let's have AI just wipe out everything, that all the, the lower level jobs. Well, those lower level jobs were paying for families. We have to remember that. And I love what my friend Joy Bolumwini says. What are the gateway jobs? If you take away everything that's entry level, how do people ever get to those higher level jobs? Then that chasm in our societies just gets wider and wider. So we need people who are thinking on that level, that systems level, about the citizenry and how the decisions that are being made at the table where tech is created impact citizenship overall, right? So I feel like bringing those humanities to bear in the conversation is long overdue. Standing up for ethics in this space is long overdue. I think that there's so much, and we have a policy arm for this reason. People need to get engaged around the policies that are being made that impact the tech or don't impact the tech. The tech has had its Wild West for way too long. I'm all for innovation, but everything else, when you create food products, when you create pharmaceuticals, there's supposed to be like groups that say, don't kill people with that. Okay.
Yes.
Right? There need to be parameters. And so who are the folks who really could get in and develop that policy? So there's so many things that are outside the actual pure development of the tech, where we need hearts and minds to participate. So being prepared means understanding all of that and figuring out where you can come in and do something unique. And there's a lot of innovation there.
That is incredible. I feel like, some people, when we talk about the future of tech, they're looking for one size answer, like one size fit all. And I love how you didn't say that. There's just so many ways to tackle this. And I think the biggest thing is being aware of the current problems that we have. And one of the biggest pain point that you brought up was that, entry level to kind of like access of, okay, how does someone get started? And I feel like that's a pain point for, college students now, where it's like there are almost no entry level engineering jobs. And then for people who are dealing with ageism, where it's like, oh, you're too old, we don't need you. So there's all these different complexities. And it's like, no, we need to figure out a way to keep everybody.
That's right. Like, because everybody's perspective is needed, right? It's not like it's again back to where we started. Value that team that's actually creating for you, and not just work so hard to replace them. It's like tech's highest and best use is in service of humanity. So the integration of tech with humanity has to be the goal. And I think we create much better tech there.
Yes, I 100% agree. And I think obviously that can be another further discussion, but I think that's good enough to help people to start thinking about how do we preserve our humanity during this AI-driven world. And I tell people a lot of your human skills are going to be more important as we move into the future than your technical skills, because those can be replaced. Can be replaced. Well, this has been such a empowering, enlightening, I don't even know the words to use, conversation. And I'm so glad that we went there. Like, there's some things I'm like, oh, I don't know, but we did. And I feel like that is needed in this time and age of having authentic, transparent conversations, because people are tired of, the corporate speak, the fakeness. It's like, we've been there, done that. And that is not helping anyone.
It's not getting us a cup of coffee right now.
It really it's not doing the job. So thank you so much, Brenda, for sharing.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
As we wrap up, this is our lightning round where you try to answer in 60 seconds or less. So these were the easiest question I've asked this whole time.
Okay.
But if you weren't in tech right now, what would you be doing?
I think I would be developing real estate.
Oh, okay. What's the last book you read?
Oh, What You Say When You Talk to Yourself. Excellent book.
Okay. What is one tech you wish you created?
Oh, I wish I had created the current phones.
Okay. What's one piece of tech that you feel is overrated?
Most games. I like games, but I play a game. I can play games on my phone all the time, but I think, more focus on it is not needed.
Who's a tech CEO that you've met that you really enjoy meeting?
There are many. The CDO of UKG. Okay. His name is Brian, and I'm not remembering his last name right now, which I should be ashamed of. He's on my board, but amazing individual.
And lastly, what is the best career advice you've ever received?
I've received lots of good career advice, but it was to, make sure, which is what I shared earlier, make sure that you know what it is you're getting when you go in.
I love it. Awesome. Well, Thank you so much, Brenda, for being on the podcast. I've learned a lot. I know a lot of folks are going to find this conversation inspiring. For folks who are thinking about going to Grace Hopper, sponsoring, please do it. Don't hesitate after this conversation. Go ahead and do it. And for folks wanting to connect with you, I believe LinkedIn is the best place to connect with you. And overall, thank you so much for being here. Grace Hopper has been part of my journey and story. That's how I got my job at Microsoft. And so it's always part of my story whenever I share it with people. And so thank you so much for all the work you do, your team, your organization, the members, the staff. You guys are amazing. And I hope to see you all in Grace Hopper 2024.
Thanks for having us. And yes, please come.
Awesome.
Thank you.